and play on 2nd and 10. That's his youth right there.
Tagovailoa trying to make up for it. Fires to the end zone. Touchdown! Alabama wins!
So today I'll be giving my Week 9 college football rankings. So I've still got Ohio State at number 1. They didn't play, so there's no reason to change them. And I've still got Indiana at 2. They beat UCLA 56-6, and I'm surprised they won by that much because well, UCLA's start of the season really couldn't have been worse. Since they fired that coach, they've been playing a lot better. And I've still got Texas A&M at number 3 because even though Texas A&M beat a better team this week than Indiana did, I can't move Indiana down for winning by 50 points. But Texas A&M, like Ohio State and Indiana, looks like a team that's good enough to have a chance to win it all. And I've still got Alabama at 4 and Georgia at 5 because even though Alabama struggled, they have the win over Georgia, so I have to leave them ahead of Georgia. And Georgia didn't even play last week. And I've still got Alabama and Georgia ahead of BYU and Georgia Tech, who I have at 6 and 7. Because even though BYU and Georgia Tech are both undefeated, and Alabama and Georgia both have one loss. BYU has one good win so far, which comes against Utah, but that's still not as good of a win as Alabama's win over Georgia or Georgia's win over Ole Miss. And Georgia Tech still doesn't have any big wins yet. But this BYU team looks like it's even better than last year's team. This team looks like they're almost for sure going to the Big 12 championship. I actually thought this past week was going to be the first time that BYU lost this season because they went on the road to play Iowa State, who very rarely loses at home. But BYU didn't only win, they won by 2 touchdowns. And Georgia Tech at this point is almost guaranteed to go to the ACC championship. They had a dominant win over Syracuse, 41-16. Georgia Tech is likely going to be 11-0 when they play Georgia. And I've still got Ole Miss at number 8. Impressive win over Oklahoma. And Ole Miss has shown in these last 2 games that probably them and Texas A&M have the best offenses in the SEC. But I still question the Ole Miss defense a lot because while they did play really well in the first half against Oklahoma, they let Oklahoma come back and take the lead in the second half. And I don't really think it's the starters that are the problem for the Ole Miss defense. I really think they just don't have enough depth. And I've got Oregon still at number 9. So they had a very bad offensive performance against Wisconsin, only winning 21-7. Now, while Dante Moore is shown that he's not Bo Nix or Dylan Gabriel yet, Oregon's offense was slow last year against Wisconsin with Dylan Gabriel. So I think maybe it's just a Wisconsin thing. But number 10, I've still got Texas Tech. So they played Oklahoma State and destroyed them 42-0 like they should. Oklahoma State is, I would say, the worst Power 4 team in the country this season. This is one of the worst Power 5 teams that I've ever seen. And while I get why they fired Mike Gundy because this is now two terrible seasons in a row, I don't get why they fired him 3 games into the season because that sure hasn't helped them. They should have just let him finish the season. But I've still got Vanderbilt at number 11. They got probably their best win so far this season against Missouri. And I've got Virginia at 12. And Virginia had a very bad performance this past week, having to go into overtime to beat a horrible North Carolina team by a score of 17 to 16. But to be fair, I have to rank Virginia still ahead of Louisville and Miami, who I've got at 13 and 14 because Virginia has beat Louisville and Louisville has beaten Miami, and they all have one loss. The AP is not being fair, having Miami ranked at 10 and Virginia at 15 and Louisville at 16. And Louisville didn't get a perfect win against Boston College this week, winning 38 to 24. And Boston College is a terrible team, but you do have to remember a win is a win. I still think Louisville is a really good team. And number 14, I've got Miami. They finally found some offense in the second half against Stanford. They were tied at 7 apiece at halftime, and Miami ends up winning 42 to 7. Miami, I think, is probably going to go 10 and 2 again. So I've got Notre Dame at 15. They didn't play, but they sure look to be a much better team than Texas, who I've got at 16. And I know this kind of sounds weird, but Texas's win actually looked less impressive than Oklahoma's loss this week. But because Texas has the win over Oklahoma, and they have the same record, I have to leave Texas ahead of Oklahoma for now. And I've got Tennessee at 18. So a great offensive performance, scoring 56 points on Kentucky, but a terrible defensive performance, giving up 34 points to Kentucky, a offense that's been terrible all season. And like I've said before, teams like this year's Tennessee team with a great offense and a bad defense that can't win championships. They couldn't even win the SEC championship like this. And I've got Missouri at 19. So normally in the past, losing to Vanderbilt would have been terrible, but this year Vanderbilt's a really good team, and it was a close loss, and they did lose their quarterback for half of that game, and because of all of that, I can't really move Missouri out of the top 20 right now, and I've got Cincinnati at 20. So they beat Baylor 34 to 20. Baylor's not a great team, but I think they're okay. So I'd say this was a decent win for Cincinnati. And I've got Houston at 21. So Houston is one of the surprisingly good teams this season. They just beat Arizona State on the road at 24 to 16. Houston is now going to have to be put on the list of contenders to win the Big 12. And that coach, Willie Fritz, I thought he would turn around the program because he's been a program builder his whole career. But even though this is his second year at Houston, I still didn't think it would be quite this soon. But Arizona State, I'd say their Big 12 championship hopes are pretty much done. So I've still got Utah at 22 because they just played the clown show from Colorado, but they beat them, I think 53 to 7 was the final score, like you would expect them to do. And I've got USC at 23. 3. They didn't play, but I've got Michigan back ranked again at 24 because USC beat Michigan, so got to put USC ahead of them because they also have the same record. But Illinois, who had beaten USC, lost again this week, which was their third loss. And Michigan did okay, beating Michigan State 31 to 20. So I've got Nebraska at 25. So they just played Northwestern and won 28 to 21. So not a great win, but Nebraska, I have them ranked because they are the only team that's beaten Cincinnati. And they did almost beat Michigan, but Nebraska's offensive line, which was supposed to be one of their strengths, really exposed themselves when they played Minnesota. They got sacked, I think, 9 times in that game. And you can't but win the Big Ten when your offensive line is like that. But that'll be it with this video. Please subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.